This is my process for making Eowyn from Lord of the Rings, The Two Towers. Use this pattern, Simplicity Costumes for Adults 4940 View A. This is the fabric that I chose. It is a really fun lace with sequins and things, and then a crushed velvet in dark green. This is me speed cutting the pattern out. I absolutely hate this part. It's the bane of my existence, but it was necessary. The fabric is kind of expensive, and I really didn't want to mess up on the dress at all, so I usually get a pattern for when there's expensive fabric involved. But I also hate them because they just can be difficult to follow sometimes. So that did happen with this one as well. It's from 2004, so shout out to the eBay seller who had it. But here we go. So the dress is put together. This was pretty simple. I think there's a cat under there. This was pretty simple to do. The sides are still open because I haven't done the sleeves yet, but this is over here because I need to work on the yoke for the neck, the collar piece. There's definitely a cat under there. And while that was very clear putting together, this is what I'm struggling with. For some reason, this doesn't make any sense. And there's no tutorials online. So we're gonna try and do it here, and hopefully once I figure it out, I can put it in my video so that you all know exactly what's going on. This is weird. Guess what? We figured it out. So this is how we're gonna do this. This is the yoke back. So this is piece 6 in the pattern. This is the yoke front or collar piece, and that is piece 5. We are going to cut out each of those, but you can see here these are facing each other. So grab your pattern and we'll take a look at getting started. The first thing you're going to do is go straight to the portion of the pattern where we have this yoke happening, and get that all set up so that you can read it and keep it handy while we do this. So these are the pieces, once again, the yoke back piece right here, and then the front yoke pieces. So these pieces are going to be kind of opposites of each other. You're going to see that if you fold them like this and they're opposite shape, they are right sides up. Now, we want to go through and do a basting stitch here. So on this V, you're going to go through and just stitch along that line. So take it to your machine and go ahead, and it doesn't matter if you stitch from the top or the bottom here. That's not really a big deal. I decided to go on the right side of the fabric. You can do whatever you want to do, but do this for both of these collar pieces. Once that's done, you're going to take a little scissors or snips or whatever you've got for your fabric, and you see this line here where it comes to a V in the middle. You're just going to snip up to that stitch, not through it, up to it. So right there, take your snippers and just do a little bit of a snip. See how it gets kind of close to the edge, but it doesn't go through? That's what we're looking for because we're trying to make this a straight line by adding that give. Do it for both of these, and you can see it makes it much easier to move that fabric around. So our next step is to put the yoke, back yoke piece and the front yoke piece together. So you'll grab a front yoke piece, and the way that I did this was to look at the picture and see which shape it was when it was wrong side out. So here, the wrong side up, that swoop there kind of goes to the left. So the jagged edge that we just sewed is on the right, and the swoop is on the left, like you see right here. And so this is what I'm mimicking. Now we're going to add the yoke. So I take the back yoke piece, and this one you just want to make sure you have the right back yoke piece. So I'm going to fold this so I don't have to flip it over. I can still visualize. But this back yoke piece, it needs to have one of these alignment markers, these little triangles that you've cut out with the pattern. It needs to have it on the bottom. So that one wasn't the right one, so I went and grabbed it. You see that there? And on this long side that I'm holding, that should be pointing down. One thing that is helpful is cutting out these little guys. I didn't used to, and honestly, that was a mistake. Stuff was misaligned all the time. So It's nice to have, and definitely recommend it if you're new to sewing. Because I don't want to iron this fabric, I'm worried about heating it. I don't want to ruin it, so I just pinned these down instead of pressing them. It works either way. Um, you can kind of do whatever you want. So if you want to press it and you have a fabric that you're comfortable using heat on for it, go for it. More power to you. I was just nervous, so I didn't. But this long piece here that I'm pinning on the right side needs to be this way in order for the yoke to work properly when you sew it together. This is where the zipper is going to come on the back of the dress, so it has to be folded over like this to create that seam allowance. So, once again, we're looking at this. We've kind of got that flattened out where we cut that down to the seam on the original collar piece. And we're just going to line up the edge here and pin it down. So this first pin is always very important. It helps you set the rest of your pins. So what we're looking at now is lining up these little triangles. So make sure you've got them lined up. There's one in the front and one in the back. And I like to pin just directly underneath them when I'm setting my like base pins, and then I can go back and add more pins later. But this just helps so stuff doesn't move around while I'm figuring it out. So go as pin as you go, pin however you'd like, but I think this is the way that works best for me. So I'm pinning right underneath that little triangle on the top. And then here's the piece that we cut down to the seam. And that's what's being held straight so that we can match it up with the rest of the seam on this side for seam allowance. So I had this folded over because it was helping me visualize. I'm going to unpin it and unfold it. These two little triangles, you see them? They are facing away from each other. This one, this one. Put those together. They are best friends. They want to hang out. Let's let them hang out. Pin underneath there and just keep them together. And then you're going to take the pin out of the other side. And this is kind of where it started to get wonky. It does not look right, but just try to pull where you snipped down to that basting stitch as high up as you can. Make it as straight across as possible. It's going to look a little bit weird, but it works. So just go ahead and make sure you catch that in the back with that basting stitch and you pin it. Once you've done that, you're going to go and take a look, make sure it looks like what you were envisioning it to look like. So I like to fold these things down to make sure it's like the picture. So pick that back up. Here is that original seam line right there. And then here's the other one. And the swoops are all facing the same way. They're still wrong sides up. So that's a good indicator that we're on the right track. Your next step is going to be to sew together. So you're going to sew right there on that swoopy piece on the top. So go ahead and take it to your machine. And we're going to do that now. So we'll sew straight across, kind of from where you snipped, so that V area across. Take it slow. Make sure everything's really flat because you don't want any rippling or bumps unless you intend to have them. So go ahead and just sew right on through there. Make sure you backstitch. That's important. Keeps your thread from falling out. And then I like to trim my edges as I go, but a little bit difficult with the way that I'm filming right now. So you'll see there's a little seam line there. And then what we're going to do is we're going to sew that other seam line. So what we're going to do is fold that up, make sure it looks right, fold everything down, make it nice and flat, and sew straight across there. The only reason I didn't do this in all one shot all the way across is because the fabric can move around quite a bit, and it starts to get a little bit of a fold in the back because we're folding that larger piece of fabric to meet up with the smaller piece of fabric. So that large collar piece is starting to gather in the back, and we want a really straight line. So what we're going to do is just sew them separately. So I just meet up with that other line that I made, take those pins out, and that should be good. All right, so we're back. We're checking out our pattern. we're making sure that this looks correct. So what we're going to do is we're going to sew right sides together, the yoke front collar to the other yoke front collar. So I have right now one yoke sitting on top of the other with the back yoke in between on this seam. You're going to sew that seam and down that front curve, making sure to catch everything. And that is going to sandwich that back yoke in between the two front yoke pieces. So essentially what we're doing here is we are taking two of the collar pieces and putting them right sides together. That's the bread. And then you have the salami in between, and that is that back yoke piece. The back yoke piece was already sewn right sides together to one of the front yoke pieces. So you're just adding the other front yoke piece so that it is right sides together with the yoke piece that's already there. So both of those collars face each other with the exterior fabric on the inside. So we'll sew it here, go along that curve, follow that from the directions, and leave that bottom portion of the curve open. You need to flip this inside out so that the right sides are facing out. Right now, it's the interior fabric. Make sure you take this slow, reach in, flatten out that back yoke that's sandwiched between these two right now when you take that corner so that you don't get any rippling effect, because that will affect your zipper on the dress later if it starts to bunch up. So flatten it out, take your time. It will be magnificent once you're done. All right, so we're back. We've sewn this side here, and now we're going to turn it right side out. So once you do that, you'll notice that you have one side where everything is the right side out. So I'll show you that now. You've got the front yoke piece, that larger piece, that is right side out, attached to the back yoke piece that was sandwiched in the middle. So you'll see that. And then if you flip it over, this is the inside of your collar. So that yoke piece, the back yoke, will be the wrong side out. But that's okay because this is it. This is exactly what we want. So this is what it looks like. They do want you to top stitch. I did not because I was doing something different, but you would just do that there along that line if you were to follow that part. But I found the construction the hardest part, so hopefully that helped. Now my main issue was, here's this beautiful green fabric. Here's my beautiful lace. I did not love that when I was placing my decals, the lace was kind of muting the fabric color. I wanted to see that vibrant green come through. So toss that aside and honestly pull out my handy lighter. If you are not an adult, if you're not over 18, do not use a lighter unsupervised. Please find an adult and be careful. But essentially what you do is you hold it really quick right underneath the fabric, and it just kind of burns it away. So be sure to be safe about this. If you're concerned about fumes, please wear a protective mask, wear something to make sure that you're not inhaling anything that would cause you any kind of respiratory distress. Take precautions, don't burn yourself. Make sure that you're ensuring everything is absolutely cool and not on fire when you're done with it. But this was the way that I found to make sure that I could see through the actual pattern here. So here's a piece where I've taken out all of the mesh with a lighter. Look at that, looks so great. The contrast is beautiful. I can see through it. I love it. Compared to the piece that doesn't have it taken out, it mutes the fabric and I don't really like the look. So this one for me, and it ended up working really well. So it's to each their own. This is just the way that I decided to do it. Here's how the yoke looks when you put both of those pieces together. So you're going to follow those directions twice to create two neck pieces, and then you're going to put them together like this. I also added the lace, and then I just sewed across. I hand stitched the lace on after I glued it, so that was a process I did not film. But you're going to just attach them on that raw edge, and that's what it's going to look like. This is the time to attach it to the dress. So the next step here is to take that yoke that you've put together, and you're going to add it to the actual body of the dress. So I've turned the dress inside out. You can see the seams. She's looking a little dull because we have the wrong side out. So what we're doing is we're going to go ahead and take this yoke and put it on and make sure that we have it facing the right direction. So I'm evening it out in the front to match up with the middle of the front of the dress and the middle of those yokes where I've sewn it together. Once I'm happy with how that looks and aligns, I'm also making sure that these shoulder seams and the seams on the yoke are matched up. Got to make sure that back seam is also matched up. You can see I have it clipped there because I want to make sure I'm getting that accurately aligned. The next step is going to be clipping. There's a reason this is fast. It took me literally 20 minutes just to put this on because I had to make sure it was even, make sure the fabric wasn't stretching too much, because it is heavy fabric and it is a two-way stretch. So making sure that this looked right was vital for me. But we got it all clipped, and it started to really take shape at this point, looking like it was actually making something. So here I am, uh, getting ready to put it all together. It's a lot of fabric, but you can do it, I believe. We're going to just sew those side seams together long ways. It takes a lot of fabric and a lot of time for this, but this is what it looks like once it's all sewn together. So don't mind me just like not knowing what I'm doing here. But this is the side seam. It's all put together. It's a nice little seam. I might serge it later, but for now it's not that big of a deal. It'll hold. And then I'm just going to make sure that everything looks good attachment wise for this piece. Good to go. Next one. This is a sleeve. So this is the bottom portion of the sleeve. As you can see, this fabric's really slippery. I can't really get a hold of it. But this is one where we're going to sew these pieces together. And obviously I don't know how to film because I'm just making faces this entire time. So apologies for that. I look crazy, but it's okay. So you're going to match up. Remember those triangles? These guys? We love them. They are like Aragorn and Arwen, Eowyn and Faramir. They are meant to be, and they will always be. So make sure that they're together. Pin that, and then sew along that line. That's going to make sure that that turns out correctly, and it will be attachable to the upper arm portion. Remember, this pattern has a lower arm and an upper arm, a shoulder portion that then you sew together, then you attach to the dress. So this part took a little time, but the turnout was really good for it, and I really appreciated the look that it gives as well. It's very much Eowyn's dress, as far as the look of the sleeves. They're very long, they're very flowy, and it's a good way for us to capture that. So I took that to the sewing machine, sewed that up. This is the top part of the arm I was talking about, so the upper sleeve. This is what we're going to put together so that we can attach it. So this little guy, you're just gonna sew it together so that it is matching up once again with those little triangles. These guys, they're besties, remember? It's like Sam and Frodo. We gotta keep them together, otherwise this whole project will fail. No, but in all seriousness, it very much is helpful to have these guides. So please cut them out. Make sure you know what's going on. Just sew there, take it to your machine, pop everything through, make sure that it works and it looks right. This is actually sewing the top, so that we can kind of guide that top sleeve into the sleeve itself on the dress, that hole. So here we are. I have a sleeve and I've got it turned so that you can see what the sleeve looks like. That's how long it is. I've also hemmed it, so that's another part that's not in the instructions, but I did not want to add contrasting fabric. So make sure your sleeve is turned the right way. And we're going to look for these little triangles again. So here's one little guy. I'm having a really hard time holding it up. There he is. Okay, one on this side. That is going to match up to one on the actual opening on the body of the dress. So the ones will go together. And then there's another side that has two triangles next to each other. That will line up as well. This is how you make sure you get the correct sleeve on the correct armhole. So follow those directions. I used to ignore them. It makes it very uncomfortable to wear. Please just match those up. So you'll see we've got that here, and we're just gonna clip them together. The next part, we're gonna speed through because I just wanted to clip that together. So like we talked about, there's two on that side. We'll just clip them all the way around. You do want to kind of look at this section and gather at the top to make sure it fits. Once that's done, you have this. It looks crazy, but it works. So that sleeve should be right side together with the body of the fabric. You can see, all we can see right now is the wrong sides, because when you do this, you're going to sew around and it's going to be magic. So once that's done, here it is sewn. You can see it's sewn through the armpit and everything. Make sure you catch everything. There's a gathering on the top just to make it fit. It shouldn't ripple on the outside, but we'll go ahead and take out those gathering stitches. They're basting stitches, so you should be able to just pull them out. I'm having a little bit of a hard time, as you can see, and questioning if I should stop the recording or not. But they should just pull out. If they don't, you can cut them out. It's not that big of a deal. But for this case, you can see what it does, and it really is just to make sure that the shoulder piece is lining appropriately. So that's what we're pulling out. I just don't like to leave them in there. I guess you could if you really wanted to, but I am also going to trim. As you can see, played myself, played bobbin roulette, and I ran out, so that was a fun time. Let's get back on track now that I've got more bobbin. So we finished the sleeve. Now we've got everything. I'm gonna pull it out and look at that magic. It is right side out. It's got a little bit of gathering, but I kind of like the way that it looks, so there's ways to avoid that. I just really don't have a huge issue with it. So, turned out good. This is the first fitting. I really needed to take it in a little bit. Sometimes the sizing on these doesn't quite work with the fabric that I choose, so decided to take it in on the sides, but the rest of it looks great. I love the collar. I love the way that turned out. Sleeves are very flowy, and this is after the final fit. That's all for now. If you like the video, leave me a like, comment, subscribe, whatever. But thanks for watching. See you soon.